Breaking news. The National Association of Realtors has just proposed a $418 million settlement to the commission's lawsuit, and the news media is having an absolute field day with it. Hi, this is John Foster, and I help realtors, team leaders, and top producing agents become #1 in their marketplace. So we're gonna get right into what some of these headlines are. Here's one right here from Apple News. The 6% commission on buying or selling a home is gone after Realtor Association agrees to seismic settlement. This will blow up the market. The 6% commission on buying and selling a home in America is dead as NAR reaches a deal. One analyst says over 50% of the country's 1.6 million real estate agents will be out of a job. Real estate 6% commission is over. New era for agents and brokers is here. This one's from the New York Times. The realtor's big defeat. A settlement in the real estate industry is a case study of central flaw in free market economic theory. So first, I would just like to talk about the existing system that has been in place for decades. It's been a very effective system that has proven to serve both the seller and the buyer very well. Traditionally, sellers have interviewed usually multiple agents. Typically, sellers will hire the agent that they see brings the most value for the commission that they're charging. And again, that fee is negotiable. What happens at that point is in the listing agreement, at the bottom of the first page here in California, it says what the compensation that's being offered to the buyer's agent is, and whether that's 2.5%, 3%, or a different number. That commission has been displayed on the multiple listing service. So buyers in the marketplace that have a buyer understand that with an accepted offer, that would be their offer of compensation once that escrow closes. So going back to some of these headlines, contrary to what these headlines are saying, there's no such thing as a standard commission structure of 5 or 6% or any other number for that fact. To be just maybe a little bit of a wise guy for a minute, that would make our jobs quite simple, as there is no negotiation of commission. We just simply meet with a seller, get a listing agreement signed at 5 or 6%, and we move on. It's never been that way. So I just want to make that really clear. Some sellers actually still today do sell for sale by owner. We've seen that really drop off over the years, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area in our market. The typical for sale by owner home sold for 15% than homes that were listed by agents. It just doesn't really work out. If you, again, do the math, they could have just paid an agent 5 or 6% on the transaction and sold the home for 15% more. So that's just a stat right on the NAR website. So going back just again to close the loop on the way the current system works, every seller wants top dollar for their property. So when there's an offer of compensation publicly listed in the multiple listing system, any buyer's agent that has a buyer that is interested in your property is gonna make an appointment to show your home. I've had listings that have had upwards of 40 offers. So we've got 40 different agents all trying to get their clients to compete to purchase your property. Why is that? Well, they're skilled agents that work with a lot of buyers, and they know they're going to get paid based on that offer of compensation the seller's offering, and it's an incentive to get their buyers to compete to pay top dollar for the seller's property. That has benefited sellers for decades and decades and decades, and that is what the current model looks like. So here is what NAR is proposing. They are proposing that any offer of compensation to a buyer's agent in the MLS is removed. It's simply just a field that's populated in the MLS listing description that is only visible to agents, and that field will simply be gone. It doesn't mean that a seller cannot compensate a buyer's agent anymore. It's just the public offering, or I shouldn't say public, it's only public to agents in the MLS, but that field is simply going to be removed. The second proposal that I want to highlight that NAR is proposing is that every buyer that is working with a buyer's agent is going to have a signed buyer's representation agreement. That has also been in place for decades. Now, it's been optional whether or not a buyer's agent and a buyer agree to put their working relationship in writing. Some agents have done it, some agents have not done it. Now, moving forward, if this proposal gets signed off by the judge and the DOJ, that is also going to be a requirement. So not a bad thing. I just think that it's going to be more that buyers are going to be interviewing their agents, deciding which agent can bring them the most value, agree upon an offer of compensation. Buyer's agent makes an offer on a property. Rather than the compensation being publicly offered, the buyer's agent's going to submit their requested compensation from the seller, and that's how offers will be presented, again, if this all gets approved moving forward. This is what I believe any seller of real estate should really strongly consider. Is I think every seller really needs to be open-minded and very willing to offer compensation to a buyer's agent. So I want to explain why that is. This is another really important statistic. Over 90% of all homes sold in the United States are co-brokered. So what does co-brokered mean? It means there's two brokers. There's a listing broker and there's a buyer's broker. Because again, to be clear, a seller has every right, and they always have, this has not changed, to not offer a commission to the buyer's agent. So for example, they could say, we'd like to hire you, John, at 3% commission. However, we are not going to offer compensation to the buyer's agent. No problem. They have every legal right. And if the listing broker agrees to those terms, they move forward under that agreement. But again, if over 90% of the homes that are sold in America are co-brokered, yet there's not a cooperating buyer's agent commission being offered on that listing, we've seen this in the past. There's been models that have done this, over the years. This is nothing new. A lot of those homes, and again, I'm not going to ever make blanket statements here because there's exceptions to everything, but the majority of those homes will sit because there's no incentive in the public marketplace for buyer's agents to go work for free to go show those listings. If you like some of the information that I'm sharing today, I'd be grateful if you'd consider liking, commenting, and subscribing on my channel as we post new videos every single week with the most informative content in the real estate industry possible. Now I would like to address buyers out there. First of all, thank you for watching. I have a bigger concern with this settlement proposal for buyers than I do sellers, and here's why. Buyers deserve an advocate. Buyers deserve representation. Buyers deserve to have somebody in their corner that is a trusted real estate professional that can guide them around potholes and obstacles and red flags throughout the transaction that they don't even know exists. Let me give you an example real quick. If you're entering into a courtroom and you are the defendant, do you want to show up without your own attorney and have the plaintiff's attorney represent the plaintiff and yourself? I don't know about you, but that sounds like a pretty scary situation. The plaintiff's attorney is in court to defend their client, the plaintiff. You walking in as the defendant, they don't have an interest in defending you. I feel like buying real estate is the same thing. If you were going to buy a property and you go to the listing agent directly, what is the listing agent's number one duty first and foremost? To be a fiduciary and advocate for who? To the seller. Okay, that's their job. They're doing their job. They're not doing anything wrong. Their job is not to advocate for you, the buyer. If I was a buyer moving forward, I would interview a few different agents and I would sit down and ask the agent kindly to please articulate the value that they're going to provide you throughout the course of this process. I think the agents that are really skilled, like all the agents on my team and many of the agents out there that are getting ahead of this, they're going to have their value proposition ready for you and they're going to be excited to describe to you what that is. In addition to that, they're going to talk about the compensation that they wish to earn by representing you. And their duty is to, first and foremost, present that offers of compensation to the seller to negotiate to get that paid by the seller. If it's not going to be paid by the seller, that's going to be another conversation. I think there's going to be allowances in there in that instance. But my personal opinion is that most savvy sellers are going to see that the current model that, again, has worked really, really well for decades is going to continue to serve them well moving forward. And my personal belief is that the majority of sellers in our marketplace here are going to continue to elect and see value in offering compensation to the agent that's representing you as the buyer to pay them to bring you to their property to make a great offer on their home. There's a really important scenario that I want to put out there for buyers and sellers, and please go with me down this path just for a quick minute and just try to visualize a scenario that I think is absolutely a potential real scenario that will definitely affect both sellers and buyers. And I just want to put this out there in the interest of giving the most information I can so that buyers and sellers can make the best decision for them. So here's the scenario. There's a home listed for $1 million and the seller has not agreed to offer any compensation to a buyer's broker, which they have every right to do. So the listing agent has taken the listing at a set commission. It could be any number. It could be 2%, it could be 3%, it could be 4%. That part doesn't matter. But what matters is that seller has elected to not offer a compensation to a buyer's agent. This particular property is what we call a hot home or a hot listing. And it's in a very desirable neighborhood. Let's say it's located within maybe the best school district, and it is a listing that is in high demand. Now, the seller might think, well, gosh, that's a really good thing. I don't need to offer compensation to a buyer's agent. And again, this is not about right or wrong or any of that. I'm just creating a scenario. So this listing is getting a ton of attention. And what's happening is buyers are seeing it on Zillow or Redfin, or they're driving past the home and they see the sign in the yard that says for sale, and they see that it's open Saturday and Sunday, and they're calling their agent, and their agent is calling the listing agent, and the listing agent is kindly letting all the buyer's agents know, thank you so much for inquiring. And the buyer's agents are asking the listing agent what commission is being offered if I represent a buyer. The listing agent is saying there is no compensation being offered. Buyer's agent is going back to their excited client and saying there's no commission being offered to me by the seller on this property, so you're going to need to pay me yourself. Let's just say they are expecting to earn a 2.5% commission. It's $1 million home and it's a first-time buyer. That's $25,000. The first-time buyer, all of a sudden, they were excited. Now all of a sudden they're in panic mode. In that scenario, what more than likely will happen is the buyer is going to go to the open house. And remember, this is a hot home. There are also going to be 40 other buyers at that open house. I'll just speak to my market. We're in the San Francisco Bay Area here. It is not uncommon for a hot home that's marketed well to have over 100 visitors in a Saturday and Sunday open house weekend. Well, let's just scale that back. Let's say a small amount want to make offers, 15 or 20. It's still physically impossible for that one listing agent, who, by the way, is hired to represent the seller. Most of those listing agents are going to let those buyers know very kindly and very respectfully, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm so excited that you love this home, but you really need to go find your own representation. In the scenario where buyer's agents, there's no cooperation, it is going to absolutely overwhelm the listing agent, and they're probably not going to have the bandwidth or the capacity to properly give all the information to the buyer to properly get them to compete. And then let's continue with this just a little bit. Please stay with me on this. This is important. Let's say there's 9 buyers of all the interested parties. There's 9 buyers that decide, I'm making an offer, and all of them said, I can't afford to pay my agent. I'm going to work with the listing agent. Is the listing agent really going to write 9 offers? Do they even have the bandwidth or the time physically to, again, go through all the reports, the disclosures, the comps, talk to the lender, get the proof of funds, get the pre-approval letter, write the offer, set it up through DocuSign, collect it all, present all 9 offers? I mean, it's never say impossible, but it is almost physically impossible for one listing agent to invest that amount of time to generate 9 offers. The way I'm describing this to you, I'm just leaning on my 20 years of experience in doing this. In the traditional scenario, if you will, that the one that's in place currently as of today, where 99% of homes are offering compensation, that's exactly what happens. It generates more offers than the listing agent can ever competently generate on their own. Because let's say that same scenario, 9 buyers, 9 offers. You've got 9 independent buyer's agents. They know they have to compete. They know it's a hot home. They know it's going to go way over asking price. They are competing and they're going, I think it's going to go $100,000 over asking price. And the other buyer's agent goes, I think it's going to go $125,000 over. And one of them says, I think it's going to go $200,000 over asking. And they write that offer and they submit that offer on the property. And that buyer, let's just say that was the winning offer, $200,000 over asking price. That more than pays for the compensation that's been offered to that buyer's agent that the seller was willing to offer, completely washes that out. Buyer is happy, they got their own representation. Seller's ecstatic. Are you kidding me? $200,000 over asking? Yes, everybody wins. So I just had to put this very real scenario onto video for everybody watching this. This affects both buyers and sellers. Based on the first thing I said in this video of, do I think commissions will change or prices? I do not think either will change. We've talked a ton about commissions. Let's talk real quick about prices. And I have to throw this out there, and some sellers may not like hearing this, but this is just the truth. Let's say there's a seller that says, my home's worth $1 million. I want to hire a listing agent, but I don't want to pay the buyer's agent anything. Well, the comps from today, because again, this is a proposed settlement for $1 million property. Let's just say that it was a 6% listing, okay? 3% to the listing agent, 3% to the buyer's agent. The comp when that home sells today at that 3% commission to the buyer's agent, that is including or baking in the commissions being paid out of that value. So moving forward, if a seller says, and this is just, I'm speaking in technical terms, so please don't shoot the messenger. In technical terms, that same seller that says, I'm not offering a co-broker commission of 3%, that home is now worth $970, not $1 million, because that 3% commission in that comp of the home that just sold in that scenario I described factors in a 3% commission to the buyer's agent. That's important for sellers to understand that that commission structure that's been in place for decades has been baked into the value and the comparable sales moving forward. It's the way we've taught our team, and the system has worked great to get sellers top dollar for their property via multiple offers, and it's helped buyers get expert representation to guide them through what's often been the largest financial transaction of their entire life. So I hope this video has helped to dispel some of the crazy headlines and the negative news media and all the chatter going around and the noise in our industry right now, and just gotten down to the actual nuts and bolts of how a real estate transaction works. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd love to speak with you. Thanks again for watching.